time that you're discovering psychedelic music, Stravinsky, um, the, the roots of the AACM are forming in Chicago.
Right.
And at some point, the notion of experimentalism and free improvisation has to become more explicit in your musical pursuit.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think Electric Miles Davis was kind of the door to that, because I'd get together with kids. I remember in 11th and 12th grade, I'd get together with kids who, we would jam more in a vamp, and there would be sort of a tonal center. So that was reminiscent of both what Quicksilver the Dead was doing, but also what Coltrane was doing, because they were staying on a particular tonal center, but moving away from it really far. Whether you're moving it away from, and that's a whole thing that's interesting, because there's two ways of moving away from it. One way, you're moving away from the tonal center in the sense that you're leaving the key and you're leaving the scale. The other way is you're moving away from it being about notes and it more being about sound. Now, obviously, in rock music, the sonic thing was really important, but in Coltrane too, particularly when Harold Saunders was in the band. And Farrell was like the first person I heard who I just was like, yeah, that's it. I was actually living in Berkeley that year. I was in my, what I guess would have been 11th grade, and I was living with friends, and I went to, aren't those records, those stores? No, I think that this one's closed now. There was a bunch of places on Telegraph Avenue where you could get used records, and I bought that Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, and he takes that amazing tenor solo at the end where he sounds kind of like Junior Walker, and kind of like just what you would call, classic free jazz. But there's a real Junior Walker side to it, and there's also how Junior Walker sounds when he's screaming. And to me, that was just like, magic. I listened to that like 5,000 times. But I want to go back to the Stravinsky and the Hendrix thing, because I think it brings up some things we probably end up talking about, which is that there's real danger in that too. I mean, you get mixed up with the idea. I mean, you want to find the commonality in these musics, and you also want to preserve what needs to be done to make those musics, and to do them right. And that you have to appreciating how they speak to you the same way is very different than talking about how you accomplish what those two artists accomplished. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think that can be problematic and has become problematic in the whole discussion of modern music. I mean, in some ways things are categorized too much. In other ways, things suddenly get. I mean, it's funny because with my resume, et cetera. I mean, the word eclectic comes out, and this is my least favorite word, because records that are actually eclectic usually just drive me crazy. But it's I like to have to feel the core of someone's music and to hear the core language and feel like it's not all over the map. If that makes sense.
How do you find that core?
Well, it's a good question, and I think it shouldn't get confused with how you present your music or what the format is. In other words, having an electric band and writing for string quartet isn't necessarily eclectic. So I think that chorus is something. I mean, at this point now, I'm going into the realm of the corny essentially, because I'm essentially a old-fashioned artist in the sense that I believe in like really out-of-dated things like personal expression, for example, which is not particularly in at the moment, but or hasn't been for quite some time. But I think it's staying true to your voice. I mean, one of the first chamber pieces I wrote in the late 90s was called Otis Spann, and it was for the pianist Otis Spann, this great blues pianist, who kind of inspired me to play the piano. But I mean, one thing I did say in the liner notes of that was that I didn't think the purpose was to take a cello, a violin, a flute, and a clarinet and try to make a music that sounded like Otis Spann. My point was to make a music that made me feel the way his music made me feel.